Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Sorry it took so long to get around to making a new video. I've decided today to do a Game Boy Advance themed video. It's one of my favourite systems to play on. I'm going to do as usual a top 15 countdown, and in particular this video focuses on my top 15 or favourite 15 games that were ported to the Advance from other consoles and machines. Here's my particular Game Boy Advance. It's a backlit modded one. It's a Pokemon themed one for some reason. I don't actually like Pokemon. I don't know how I ended up with it, but it certainly does the job. I hope you agree with my choices. I'm sure there'll be some games that you'll be shouting out, why on earth hasn't he included that one? I mean, there are some that are a bit dubious that I couldn't include. You know, Grand Theft Auto as an example. Although it plays and looks like the PC and PlayStation 1 versions of the game, it's not strictly a port. It's more of a prequel to Grand Theft Auto 3 for other machines. So there's some instances like that. Often there is a good reason, but I'm sure there are some games I've left out. So let me know in the comments if there's one of those. Anyway, I've got a cracking list of games lined up from a whole host of different machines, ranging from the arcade, the NES, Super Nintendo, even some Sega consoles. Who would have thought we'd ever see Sega games on a Nintendo machine? But here we have it, and let's take a look. Okay, so first up at number 15, we have Comix Zone. So here we have Comix Zone, which was released on the Mega Drive and Genesis back in 1995. It was ported to the Game Boy Advance in 2002, and in fact this port was the only port it ever did receive. If you had suggested at the peak of the Sega and Nintendo war in the mid-90s that just 7 years later you'd be playing a Sega game on a Nintendo console, I think you would have been called crazy, but by 2002, here we were. Now we all know that the 90s was littered with so many beat-em-ups, but what I like about this game is it's not your typical left-to-right scroller. As you can see with the graphics, you can scroll through the comic book, in 4 different directions. To summarise the game briefly, you control Sketch, who has ended up in his own comic book, on a quest to defeat the villain Mortis, who wants to seize control of the real world from which you came from. Now good luck trying to find a copy of this for the Game Boy Advance. The game was released in the EU only, making it even more difficult to find. If you are successful, I would expect you to have to pay up to around £200, it's so rare. So, you might be better off just sticking to the ROM. And now number 14, we have Wolfenstein 3D. Wolfenstein 3D then, for good old MS-DOS, released by ID Software in 1992, eventually ported to the Game Boy Advance, amongst a whole host of other systems, by 2002. Now you wouldn't think a 3D first-person shooter would play particularly well on a 3-inch screen, but you'd be surprised, and perhaps my video doesn't do the graphics justice because it's had to stretch so much for my recording. The object of the game is to fight the Nazis and work your way up 10 different levels and elevated to the final boss, and playing as protagonist William Blazkowicz, you'll collect treasure, health and ammunition to help you on your way. Now as for price, this is significantly cheaper than the previous game in the list. You'll only have to pay around £15 for the cartridge, or perhaps closer to £25 for a boxed version. My number 13 is Street Fighter Alpha 3. So this, the final instalment of the Alpha series, was released for the arcade in 1998 and ported to the Game Boy Advance 4 years later. As you've just seen, impressively this version of the game boasts all the characters from the arcade. However, some aspects of the game have had to be compressed, including the number of levels and voice samples, due to the Advance's storage limitations. Don't let that put you off though. The graphics and gameplay are fantastic here, and there are 3 different playing styles in which you can play the game, known as isms, the A-ism, X-ism and V-ism, which all relate to previous Street Fighter titles. Now as for pricing, this is certainly one of the more affordable titles on my list. In fact, you can pick up the cartridge loose for around £10, and not much more to get a box version either. Next up is number 12, and that's Castlevania. In stark contrast to the previous game on my list, here we have a title that was released on the NES in 1986, which is actually the oldest game of my 15 chosen here. And as part of the GBA's NES Classics range, this was released for the handheld in 2004. As the name of the range NES Classics suggests, it's a direct port from the NES. It's an exact replica of the original, the first in the Castlevania series. Sure, the graphics are as 8-bit as they come, but this game's all about nostalgia, and provides you with the opportunity to play one of the best NES games on the go. We all know the plot here. You control Simon Belmont in Dracula's castle, over the course of 18 stages. As you'd expect with an older game, the controls can be a bit fiddly, especially with Simon's whip weapon, but don't let that put you off, there are plenty of other weapons to pick up along the way anyway. And now for the all-important pricing. Well, Castlevania games are notoriously expensive these days, no matter what console you buy them for. We're not talking the megabucks value of the Mega Drive or PlayStation games though. In fact, this one is only about £30, but more obviously as you'd expect if you want the game complete in its box. Number 11 now, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Another game that I'm sure needs very little introduction. This was released for the Super Nintendo in 1995, before being ported to the Game Boy Advance in 2002. And here it takes on the additional title of Super Mario Advance 3. Having played the Mario NES games and then Super Mario World on the SNES, I remember when I first heard about this game, and the idea that Mario was just a whinging baby and you actually controlled Yoshi didn't fill me with much anticipation, but how wrong I was. It truly is a great port and plays identically to the Super Nintendo version, and not only that, the Advanced version benefits from exclusive bonus stages for each individual world that are accessed by 100% completion of any given level. And in order to do this, you must finish the levels with 30 seconds left on the timer, collect all the red coins and all the flowers that are available. The game's crayon-style graphics won it awards on both the Super Nintendo and the Advance, and I guess you could say it paved the way for future Yoshi games, such as Yoshi's Woolly World and Yoshi's Crafted World, in terms of graphical experimentation. The good news about this game on the Advance is it represents great value for money. In recent times I've seen it go on eBay for even less than £5. Into the top 10 we go now, and first up, Sega Rally. This renowned racing game first appeared in arcades in 1994 and then on the Sega Saturn not long afterwards. Now the Advance version, which was released in 2002, is an interesting one. While it is said to be a port of the original, it does actually play more like Sega Rally 2. Now of course you can't expect the Advance to carry over all of the arcade game's features, but there is a wealth of options to choose from as you've just seen. There's a decent amount of cars to choose from. Of course they're all fully licensed from the likes of Ford, Peugeot and Toyota. You've then got 6 tracks to race around, and of course the different options for gameplay such as arcade, time attack, and multiplayer via the device's link cable. I can see why people criticise the game graphically. I mean, it's very pixelated, although that isn't helped by the fact I'm recording this on an Apple Mac, and the screen is stretched much beyond what it would be on a Game Boy Advance screen. You can change the view from within inside the car, but of course that stretches it even further. And therefore, if you're not a fan, may I suggest you check out V-Rally 3 instead, which is a bit more pleasing on the eyes. Now you may need to be patient in the UK if you want to find this game, such as its rarity. When loose carts do appear on eBay though, they're not too badly priced at between £20 to £25. Now you could import a cart from either Europe or Japan, but this obviously comes at a price. Now at 9 we have SimCity 2000. Now I couldn't turn down the opportunity of including a port of one of my favourite games ever. Yes, SimCity 2000 was released to widespread acclaim back in 1993, for Windows and DOS initially. It was then ported to a whole host of 16 and 32-bit machines, before finally receiving this surprising port in 2003. Now as I've just shown you in the menu on the left hand side, it features all the classic SimCity aspects such as residential zones, commercial zones, amenities, emergency buildings, power stations, etc. The only thing that is lacking from the original version is dealing with water supply. And you may also notice a lack of music, but please don't let that put you off. It truly is a fantastic little version of the game. It's amazing how much detail Maxis and EA have crammed into the small cart. It's cheap too, don't expect to spend more than £10. At number 8 on my list is Phantasy Star. One of the more intriguing titles on this list, the original Phantasy Star as shown here, was released on the Master System back in 1987. Now this was then ported to the Sega Saturn as part of a compilation disc in 1998. And the compilation was then ported to the Advance 4 years later. And if you're a fan of 8-bit RPGs, this is the perfect way to play one on the go. Now as for the game itself, you control Alice on a quest to defeat the evil King Lassic who has killed her brother. In typical Japanese RPG fashion, expect to see experience points and random encounters along the way, and it's the perfect combination of top-down perspective exploration in the overworld, and then 3D scrolling throughout the dungeons from a first-person viewpoint. These graphics were excellent in 1987, and I think even in 2002 they're pretty good too. You should be able to pick this up for around £25 for a loose cart on eBay. But don't forget, you're actually getting Phantasy Star 1, 2 and 3 when you get it. My number 7 is Double Dragon. Okay, so we're into the second half of this video now, and we're going back to the arcades for Double Dragon. Like the previous entry in my list, this was released initially in 1987, before reaching the Game Boy Advance in 2003. Classed as a remake as well as a port, this version features 4 extra stages, although all other elements of the game remain the same. It's still Billy and or Jimmy Lee against the Shadow Warriors. There's a variety of way of doing so. You can play against a friend using the Advance's link cable, or you can choose to play as both characters, splitting between the two during the game. There's also a survival mode to the game, where you have to defeat as many enemies as you can without losing a single life. Now this is possibly the cheapest game on my list. You shouldn't need to spend more than £7 or £8 on eBay for a loose cart. At number 6, I'm going for The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Here we are then, Zelda and Link's third outing, and first for the Super Nintendo, released in 1991, and a welcome return to a top-down perspective. A Link to the Past shown here was ported to the Advance in 2002. As well as the port, gamers were treated to an additional adventure on the same cartridge called Four Swords, which was a multiplayer game for the Advance. Anyway, back to A Link to the Past. This version here on the Game Boy Advance is pretty much, well, it's 99% the same as the Super Nintendo. The only difference is there's a secret technique you can perform with your sword known as the Hurricane Spin. I'd even go as far as saying it's my favourite Zelda game of all time. I mean, it's a pretty large overworld with a town, a desert, lake, and of course, plenty of dungeons, but yet the story isn't too extensive. In fact, everything is perfect for a handheld system. Zelda fans really were treated on the Game Boy Advance. As well as this 2-game cartridge, you could also play the 2 NES Zelda games from the NES Classics range, as well as an exclusive game to the Advance, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, which was later released for the Wii U Virtual Console. You should be able to pick up a loose cartridge of this for about £10 to £15 on eBay, but do beware, there are plenty of fake cartridges out there. Okay, so we're into the top 5 now, and first up here we have Mega Man and Bass. Now I appreciate this is a bit of a left field choice as far as 16-bit era games go. The game was a spin-off from the main Mega Man series and released in Japan only on the Super Famicom back in 1998. It was only 4 years later that it was released for the Advance, mind. It's set just after Mega Man 8, although you'll see from the graphics here that it plays more like the older Mega Man series games. And as the title suggests, you can play through the game as Mega Man or Bass. But once you've picked a character, there's no going back. It really is a bit of a hidden gem on the system. 90% of Mega Man games seem to be notoriously expensive. Sales prices on eBay for this title really do vary, so try and hold out for a bargain. And like I've said with another game on this list, do be aware of imitations. And at number 4, it's Shining Force. So here we are then with another 1992 Sega Mega Drive title that would one day go on to make the unimaginable move to the Nintendo Game Boy Advance in 2004. And this port was actually given the full title of Shining Force: Resurrection of the Dark Dragon. As well as a standard port, it was given remake elements too, such as an extended plot, 3 new playable characters, and 3 new battles. As well as that, there was a few minor tweaks to the gameplay too. Now let's just take a moment to appreciate the fantastic soundtrack. It's a game with everything that you'd want from a turn-based RPG. It follows the usual plot of guiding the protagonist, in this case Max, recruiting allies to join the Shining Force, and preventing the evil Kain from resurrecting the Dark Dragon. As always, gaining experience points and levelling up is key. I've already mentioned how much I love the sound, but you can see that the graphics are perfect for the Advance too. It may lack the depth, say, of Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem, but it makes up for this in abundance in terms of its character, storyline, and thoughtful gameplay. Now I'm afraid this is one of the more expensive games on this list, and you may have to part with between £40 and £50 just for the loose cart. At number 3, we have Doom. For this entry we're going back to the PC and MS-DOS for the game that was released in 1993. Doom must be one of the most ported games of all time. Growing up in the mid-90s, a good school friend of mine even had a version on his scientific calculator, and in more recent times I've seen people mod their sat-nav to include Doom. It just shows what a great game it is, the fact that it's still being released to this day. It's even on the Nintendo Switch now, and the Xbox One. But enough of that, we're here to talk about the version you're seeing on your screen now, the Game Boy Advance version from 2001. It's a pretty faithful port to the original PC version. There are a few minor differences, the most notable of these is the actual map, which is more like the Atari Jaguar than anything else. It's perhaps not as gory as other versions, but it's definitely the best way to play on the go. To give you an idea of the price, I paid £18 for my loose cart. Number 2 now, and it was a close battle, but I've gone for Super Mario World. Okay, so I'm sure as you all know, this was originally a Super Nintendo game released back in 1990, before being ported to the Advance 10 years later as Super Mario World with the subheading Mario Advance 2. It's pretty much a carbon copy of the Super Nintendo version, although it's said that the levels are slightly easier, but to be honest, I can't really see that. I think it plays exactly the same. The game took all the brilliance of Mario's previous encounter, Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES, and added so much more, most notably the inclusion of Yoshi for the first time in a platform game, and the ability for Mario to ride him, and all the benefits that comes with that, such as Yoshi's ability to eat enemies and spit them out as fireballs afterwards. The game introduced other things that we all got to know and love too, such as Mario's cape allowing him to fly and glide, and the ability to store an extra power-up at the top of the screen. It's easy to see why the game has been voted the greatest of all time on many occasions, and like so many other games in this list, it's perfect to play on the go. The game sells for around £12 for a loose cartridge, but for something that contains 96 quality levels, that's superb value for money for me. Okay, my number 1 spot, you may have guessed, you may not have. I've gone for Donkey Kong Country. It's another game ported from the Super Nintendo that makes my number 1. Donkey Kong Country was released for the 16-bit console in 1994, before making its way to the Game Boy Advance in 2003. The game was heralded by everyone back in the 90s for its pre-rendered graphics and pseudo 3D environment. Nothing like this had really been seen in the 16-bit era before, and because the fact that the Advance is 32-bit, it's able to handle all aspects of the game with ease. Having said that though, the graphics were downgraded slightly on purpose due to the fact that the Advance in its original form didn't have a backlit screen. What the Advance version did offer though was the ability to save the game at any point, plus additional mini-games and a time trial mode too. I'm sure the game needs little explanation. As you see here, you play as both Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, his nephew. You can split between the two at any point, or if one dies, the other one takes over. The object of the game is to make your way across Donkey Kong Island and recover the Kong family's banana hoard, which has been stolen by the evil King K. Rool. You'll meet other Kong family members along the way, such as Cranky Kong, who was actually the original Donkey Kong of the games back in the 80s, as well as Candy Kong and Funky Kong too. And similar to Mario with Yoshi, Kong also benefits from finding his animal friends, as you saw earlier with Rambi the Rhino. There's 5 of these in all, and they all boost Kong's abilities, such as jumping higher or running faster. Once you're done with this game, you can also play Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3 on the Advance as well, which also received great ports from the Super Nintendo. A loose cartridge of the game typically sells for between £10 and £15, and although it contains significantly less levels than Super Mario World, around 40 in total, it still represents good value for money because I find it harder than Mario. Right, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'm sure there's some games here that you agree with, some certainly that you don't agree with, but let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it'll really help my up and coming channel. Thank you. Goodbye.